And thank you so much to Veronica in the 50th Action Ward. Veronica was telling us about what they do as the 50th Ward Action Network. And it sounds like such a valuable community service to have a place where people come together and learn about different issues that are being debated and policies and ways that it affects people. And I think it's awesome. So I'm really, really honored that Parole, Illinois was invited to come and speak about the work that we're doing involving pushing for earned reentry or a parole system in the state of Illinois. So before we get too far into anything, I want to introduce our panelists or have our panelists introduce themselves. So Ken, would you mind just sharing a little bit about who you are?
Not a problem. My name is Ken Berry. I am with the law firm of Winston and Strawn. I was a senior paralegal for 20 years, and over the last couple of years, I've transitioned into a role where I primarily focus on corporate social responsibility and pro bono work. I am a former police officer for many years ago, been working in the criminal justice system for a long time with the Department of Corrections as well. And I am happy to be here, and hopefully we can get somebody to learn something today. So thanks.
Oscar, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Oscar Parham. I'm a community organizer for Parole, Illinois. It's my job to educate faith-based organizations about the parole bill, not just faith-based organizations, any type of grassroots organizations about parole bill, to let them know that there's no parole system in Illinois. Because see, we need our constituents to, understand that, to get the message out or contact legislators about the fact that that everybody in Illinois is not in favor of harsh and unfair sentencing laws, but this is my second job, Parole, Illinois. My first job is I'm a youth and adult mentorship director for a reentry program. I have a passion to help young kids, at-risk youth, to not make the same mistakes that I made. So yeah, there you go. And like Ken said, I just I hope that this is something that everybody can learn something from.
And Lauren?
Hi, everybody. I'm Lauren Metlock. I am a human rights advocate and community organizer with Parole, Illinois. Also justice impacted in both my brother and my husband are currently incarcerated serving de facto life sentences at this point.
And I'm Katrina. I'm working with Parole, Illinois, but I also originally got connected to this work because I was coaching a debate team in Stateville Correctional Center. And the gentleman that I was working with in there decided to host a public debate about bringing a parole system to Illinois, it happened back in 2018. And that is the point at which I learned that Illinois didn't have a parole system. I, at that point, was very shocked because I hadn't been very aware of anything in the criminal justice system, really, but my understanding was that a parole system is pretty central to the operation of any criminal justice system. In my understanding, it's the way that you check and make sure that people are, ready to re-enter society. And it's like, okay, be blessed and go into the world. And so when I first learned, I was baffled. So I learned in 2018, which was the 50th anniversary of getting rid of the parole system that we originally had in Illinois. So we did have a parole system until 1978. And then for the last now 53 years, we have not. There's a group called Restore Justice who has been pushing a bills that would make it possible for people who have been sentenced like since 2020 to go up for parole in 20 years or so. So there is hope for a small number of people to have parole at some point, but there are over 27,000 people who are in the Illinois Department of Corrections right now who don't have access to a parole system, and those are the people that we're working for. So to explain just a little bit about the bill, the idea is that after 20 years, we will allow everyone in the Illinois Department of Corrections to become eligible for parole hearings. So right now, the way things work, when an individual is sentenced, they know exactly the date that they're going to be released, no matter what. And so we want to say, hey, we don't want the judge to have 100% of the the choice in this, but we need to be able to take into consideration who people become after they've served time in the Illinois Department of Corrections. And so we should be looking at them after they've been in prison for 20 years to make sure that, we don't keep people in there longer than they need to be in there. I saw a question in the chat, is this bill retroactive? Yes. So that's what makes this bill unique, is right now, most other people who are fighting for a parole system or earned reentry or anything kind of similar, like a system of review for people who are incarcerated, it's all just looking forward. This bill that we're fighting for, HB 2399, would apply to people who are currently incarcerated. So we're going to be talking about why that's so important. So let's start with Lauren. She mentioned that she has a brother and her husband who are both incarcerated on very long sentences. So can you explain what this bill would mean for them and for you, and how it would impact your situation?
Awesome. Like I mentioned before, both my brother and my husband, although convicted, separate incidents and everything, their paths have been similar in that they both were juvenile offenders, first-time offenders. They were over sentenced, and I'm sure you guys probably are familiar with that school to prison pipeline and mass incarcerations and some of those issues that happen predominantly in the Black and Brown communities. Not to take away or diminish whatever crime was committed, but in this instance, they're serving de facto life sentences. And because of truth in sentencing, meaning they would have to serve 100% of their time, they would be elderly when they came home. So they've already completed 20 years, they've served 20 years. And at 20 years, my brother Jeremiah already has his associate's degree. He has a plan of action for when he comes home. He has family, he's educated himself, he stayed out of trouble. He has been exemplary in that effect. My husband Manny actually is in the master's program through North Park University. And I think it's about 5 or 6 courses from having his master's. And so just finding every program, every chance, these men and women have tried to educate themselves, take advantage of any opportunity, small thing that they can to show and prove they are more than that conviction. So they're educating themselves, they're keeping their family ties. In 20 years, they haven't had one ticket, meaning a new incident, an issue, something like that. They don't have violent tendencies. And that just goes to show, not just because they're human beings, they don't have a propensity for violence. And after, even before 20 years, but people who have done a long amount of time, recidivism, the rate goes down dramatically. It's nearly nothing, to be honest. After they've served so long. So at this point, if they were eligible just to go in front of the parole board and say, this is what I've done in 20 years, this is my behavior, this is my education, this is where I'm at, this is what I have improved, that would give so many people a chance and a motivation to do more and do better, regardless if they were wrongfully convicted or not. This might be the only means for them to reacclimate into society, for them to go home. We we know how this justice system has not always been just. We see that, we know the articles, we read the statistics, we see it play out every day in our lives and the lives of our loved ones. We're never too far from that. And just to give people a chance, or this small thing can be so great and amazing for families and for people and human beings, because it will give them a chance, just a chance to show and prove. Because if they can't find relief in the court, or they can't have their conviction overturned, a lot of people are doing that, but if in the event they can't, or whatever means legally, they don't have any other options, or they can't pay to show or prove, but the PRB will give them an opportunity for that. So I am so hopeful and excited and looking forward to this bill passing and all the other things that will help dismantle some of these systems that have kept us bound, and that have taken people, the workforce, people that have skills, and I don't want to say that, because regardless of their education or their if they're capable, everybody deserves a chance to show and prove. And 20 years is more than enough. That is nearly a lifetime. At 40, your arthritis is kicking in. You're not running around being loud and rambunctious and doing some of the same things. So I'm pushing forward. And I hope that other people will support and look into these issues and really understand how systemically it's happened over time and time again. And it's not too far off from where it can come to your doorstep. So I just hope that people will see the humanity in themselves and other people, and just push to give them this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Yeah, I mean, you touched on so many different pieces there of just the fact that it would bring people hope, the way that it will incentivize people to pursue more education, more rehabilitation while they're inside, the fact that we need these systems of review and the ones we have right now are inadequate. There's a few people have thrown questions in the chat about what can we do right now. So good work, Lauren. You're very persuasive. People want to do something already. So I am just going to drop in a link. That's a way that you can just contact your legislators and say, hey, hello, my elected officials. I would like you to know that I support this, and please vote in favor of this bill. So you can fill that out and you can send it around to as many people as you know who you think feel the same way as you do about this. And we're gonna shift over to Ken Berry and hear from him about what he thinks this would mean, and talking a little bit about his relationship with the Illinois Department of Corrections.
Right. Well, thank you, Katrina, and thank you, Lauren, for your comments as well. My history with the Department of Corrections is a little storied. I mentioned earlier that I'm with the law firm of Winston and Strawn now. I've been at the firm for 21 years now, but prior to that, I was a police officer in the early 90s, and I became a victim of a wrongful conviction. I spent a little over 8 years in the Department of Correction, and the law firm that I work for now helped me to prove my innocence. Since I've been at the firm, I've worked on several with what we call C number cases. C numbers are prisoners who have been incarcerated prior to 1978 who are still eligible for parole. There's only about 100 or so men and women in the Department of Corrections who were sentenced prior to 1978 who are eligible for parole under the old law. So I've worked on several of those cases over the years. And from being in the Department of Corrections, I can speak firsthand as to the importance of it. Number one, Lauren mentioned incentivizing people. Everybody in the Department of Corrections has one thing in common. They want to go home. Period. Mm-hmm. They want to go home. So a parole bill is so smart because number one, if somebody has, just for the sake of conversation, 50 years to do, and they say, well, based upon me educating myself, based upon my behavior, based upon vocational skills, family contact parole plan, if I can do 20 years instead of 50 years, okay, Alex, I'll take 20 for 200, you know? So that's definitely a way to incentivize the prisoners. And also, I agree wholeheartedly with Lauren that the higher the education achieved while incarcerated, the lower the recidivism rate. That also goes for age. The older you are, the lower the chances are of you returning to prison. All of those things are great things, not only for the men and women incarcerated and their families, but it's also a good thing for the community. We do not want to lock someone up for 20 years that may be a functional illiterate when they're incarcerated. They're released the same way 20 years later. Their options are terrible, but they may victimize someone. So it's just smart all the way around. Everyone says that the Department of Corrections' main focus is community safety. That's the way to make our community safer. Also, there's a constitutional mandate in Illinois, the Constitution, to restore offenders to useful citizenship. Parole is a way for us to achieve that. All of these things are just smart things to do. And it's not a novel thing. I mean, we had it in 1978 and they got rid of it for whatever reasons back then. And several other states have parole as well. And I'm an advocate for putting the responsibility on the men and women. Okay, if you want to go home, show me why you should go home. Let your behavior show you should go home. And it's a balancing stick. We want to have the victims of crime have their say. We also want the men and women who are not the same people that they were when they were 19 or 20 years old to be able to have an opportunity. And that's all this is about, having an opportunity. And it'll just be a great thing, and it's a smart thing for us to do in a balanced way to approach our criminal justice system.
Thank you so much, Ken. Yeah, I think the way that you're talking about how it kind of restores autonomy to people who are held in cages, and we restrict their freedom as much as possible to give them something where it says, hey, like, you are in control of this. And we are going to pay attention to it, and how you act and the classes you take advantage of and the way that you apply yourself during your time here, the ways that you do use the autonomy you have is going to determine whether or not you can go home, which is the thing that, like you said, is what everyone in the Illinois Department of Corrections wants. So I see it as bringing a humanizing element, and kind of restoring meaning and purpose, and putting the onus back on people rather than just saying, hey, take a knee, sit out your time, and then we'll let you go when it's time to let you go. It's just a fundamentally different way to approach it. Lauren, do you want to say something?
If I could just add, of course, we know the necessity for it, but there are so many things that go hand in hand. And I just would encourage everybody on the line also to push for the educational opportunities to be in these facilities, because they're few and far in between. And there's so many people that want to take advantage of it and want to do it. And maybe there's just not enough space, or they don't have the capacity for it. So there are so many people whether they were wrongfully convicted or whatever, or actual innocent, or any of those things. They want to, but they might not even have the opportunity. So even with that, there are some barriers. Just to put that out there, because if the programs are there, people will take advantage of it. There'll be so many applicants for associates, bachelors, whatever program. There will be an influx of people ready. And I say people, just people on the inside, because they're not the sum of their conviction. They just not, these are human beings. These are moms and dads and brothers and sisters and grandparents and godparents and everything. They are valuable, that and human and necessary. So that was all.
And let me say one thing along with that, Lauren. When I was incarcerated, I was able to complete my bachelor's degree through a Roosevelt University program. And because of that program, I was able to get hired by the firm, because you had to have a bachelor's degree in order to apply for this job. Now, unfortunately, that program was discontinued, but it goes to the point. When you look at all of the Roosevelt University graduates, the recidivism rate was maybe 1%, maybe 2%, maybe. All of those people that graduated, came out, were doing great, working great jobs, paying taxes, supporting their families, all of that. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, I want this bill to pass, but once this bill is passed, the programming in the Department of Corrections has to be increased in order for it to really be effective.
Yeah, and if I may say so, when we allow people an opportunity for release, and we are letting people go back home who no longer need to be incarcerated, then more programming will be available to the people who are still inside. So yes, we should also increase programming and make it more available to people. But one of the ways that we can make it more available to people is making sure that people who no longer need the programming aren't in the prison anymore. All right, Oscar, you ready for this? Tell us what you got. What's your relationship with the Illinois Department of Corrections, and why do you think parole might be a good thing?
Well, my relationship, I just got out like after serving 30 years. That's where, and I was on the debate team that Katrina was talking about earlier, that, kind of pushed a lot of this stuff into motion. A lot of the guys that's on the debate team, I know them. I know Lauren's husband. I know Nancy's brother. I know all of them. I've seen them, and I know how these guys have, that I mentioned what I do as a youth and adult mentor for a reason. And I wanted that to be known because of the simple fact that I know it's a lot of these guys that has that type of heart and that type of mentality to make that type of a difference. You know what I mean? So, and I think that, a lot of, it's so unfair, the sentencing structure is. You asked me about how I was released. I had a natural life sentence. And if it wasn't for me being able to get my story heard, I could just as easily still be locked up as, I'm here right today. If it wasn't for that debate team and me getting a chance to get my story heard and them hearing that, wow, how did you get locked up for this? And all these senators and legislators not understanding that there is no parole system. There is no parole in Illinois outside of the C numbers that Ken was talking about. I did 30 years for a case I didn't do, but it's even bigger than that because, I know people in there. I know a lot of people. I can even look at my co-defendant. I always talk about my case, but I got a co-defendant who his case is, they got him as the shooter, right? Now I was talking to a state rep about, certain laws, and I was trying to get her to understand that, we need, you can't use carve-outs because every situation comes with its own merit. You know what I mean? in his case, even though they have him as the shooter, the thing is that when you look at his case, the details of his case was his jury tried to get him self-defense and second-degree murder. So he was fighting for his life. It wasn't like it was done in an intentional, hardcore way. Now, as a 20-year-old kid that's going through this, that's fighting for his life and end up killing some guys, right? And I'm not downplaying the fact that 2 people were killed, right? But what I'm saying is that when you're fighting for your life as a 20-year-old in that situation, does that, even though it might deserve some time, do it call for them to say that you're so incorrigible that you have no need for another chance in life? You know, so I think that it's essential that we have a parole board. I think that it could, you know, Lauren said something that hit me. She said, it can come to your doorstep. And that's usually the time when people like to get involved, but you can also get involved before it comes to your doorstep, because it means a lot more when you do it from that perspective rather than it coming to your doorstep. You know what I mean? Miss Wilson, I seen something in the chat that Miss Wilson said, where she said she had a husband that's in Stateville, and he, you know, what she said about the facts of his case was that he didn't have lack of physical evidence. Basically, it's so many people in prison that's under that just at least need a chance to get their stories heard. I'm not gonna lie to you, you know, because this is what I think legislators need to understand when we talk to them about it, because when we talk about our bill, the first thing that comes to their mind is we're just going to let everybody go. No, this is not going to let everybody go. That's far from the truth. You need to understand that, because they're going to still have to go to parole board. It's going to and it's going to give people hope that's going to come into prison. There's so many people in prison. We see all of the people, just like Lauren was talking about how her husband is in college. I'm in college too. I'm still finishing up college. That's one thing I forgot to mention earlier. I'm still finishing up college from when I was in prison, and I get my master's degree next year, right? But there are so many other people that you don't hear about that's locked up in the cells, young people that's coming through that has no hope and live like they have no hope. But once you give them a parole board or give them something that can give, then they'll start dumping into these rehabilitative programs and act like they have hope. You have, in order to, you know, because people don't realize, you know, what it's like to feel like you're gonna die in prison. There was times I got let out on a case that I didn't do, and there were times where I felt like I was gonna die in prison because the court systems were so unfair. And this is all we're doing is just asking, because they're not infallible. If they were infallible, you wouldn't have all of these cases that are being overturned, death row cases and stuff like that. So I think that there needs to be a parole system. The parole board know what they're doing. You know, they definitely know what they're doing. Let them do that. You know, it's not going to let everybody out, and that's one of the most important things I think that need to be understood. The guys need a chance to get their stories heard. That's all it's about. In the ones that get their stories heard, because it's not just about, you know, I can look at my situation on how I got my story heard, but it's even bigger than that. You have some people that have changed. You know, every, you know, 18-year-old kid catches a case. You know, it's like looking at the picture of a baby when he's first born, and then looking at a picture of him when he's 25 years old. He looks completely different. That's how our actions be sometimes. Our actions be just like that. We change just like that. So I think it's essential that we have a parole board. It'll solve so many problems that, you know, I think that they looking at one thing. Well, they committed this crime. It's a harsh crime. It's a harsh crime. It's a harsh crime. Yeah, I get that. And this is what the board is for, to single out those, because like I say, it's not gonna, if we get to fooling ourselves and it's gonna let everybody out, that's not the truth. But it will be able to say, okay, well, we can at least look at this guy, see what he's doing, see how, you know, see if his cases, for one, if his case has like merit to say, okay, dog, wow, you know, look, give you an example, my case. They would have looked at my case, I'd have been home 10 years ahead of the 30 years that I did, because they was like, okay, he didn't have no convictions before 48 years of no history of violence, but you got me on a theory of accountability where I wasn't even at the scene of the crime, and you give me, you know. So yeah, I just think that it's essential that we get a parole.
Thanks, Oscar. I've seen so many good questions in the chat, and we are going to be addressing them at the end with a formal Q&A that Veronica is going to be facilitating. But one of them that I want to dive into and talks about some of what we've planned to talk about is what happened in 1978. Why did the parole board get abolished then, and what would we do now? What would it look like now? So Ken, can I call on you to talk about the 1978 debacle?
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I mean, basically in 1978, it was, you know, the beginning of the tough on crime, so to speak, scenario where the sentencing scheme was changed to the indeterminate sentencing to determinate sentencing. Under the indeterminate sentencing, you may have a sentence of anywhere between 50 and 150 years. And you went to the parole board after 11 years to make a determination on if you were suitable for release. And at that time, I mean, there were a lot of different educational, vocational programming, trade school, things of that nature in the Department of Corrections. It was a lot different. When they switched to the determinate sentencing, it was, if you had a 50-year sentence at that particular time, you had to do 25%, 50% of your time. So you had to do 25 years on a 50-year sentence. And after the determinate sentencing, we started the truth in sentencing that Lauren mentioned earlier, where you had to do 85% of your time or 100% of your time on murder convictions. So, and with all of those, the key thing is that there was no longer a parole board. No longer you did, 11 years or 12 years, whatever the case may be, and you went to the parole board every year. That's when it was abolished in 1978, when they changed the sentencing scheme in Illinois.
Yeah, so my understanding beyond just the we're moving toward tough on crime now. We want punishment to be the primary purpose of prison. We don't want people to have the chance to be released after 11 years, which was the case for everyone. Until 1978, no one served more than 11 years and 3 months without going for before a parole board to have their case and their self-considered for release. So we were saying, okay, longer sentences, things that people can't get out early. It just kind of was the lead-in to all of the increase in sentence length. And yeah, like Ken said, the truth in sentencing. And so, whereas in Illinois in 1970, we had a total of just over 6,000 people in our prisons. We now have over 5,000 people in Illinois prison who are serving life without parole sentences. So we have almost as many people in prison today who we are planning to never release, who will only be taken out of prison in a coffin, as we had in prison total in 1970. It's a massive humanitarian toll, and it just happened through so many different policies, and it all grew, and the tough on crime and harsh sentencing things all built on top of each other. And now we're at this point and we're saying, hey, the toll is too high. We need to start looking at people again and kind of restore the purpose of rehabilitation to the prison system. We don't just want to punish people. We want to restore them to useful citizenship, as Oscar mentioned, is part of the Illinois Constitution. Lauren, do you want to add something?
I was just going to add, for anybody that's hearing these things and it just, how is this happening? Everything, like Oscar mentioned, accountability. You weren't there, you didn't necessarily have anything to do with it, but because maybe you had heard about, were slightly involved in some type of way, any minute thing, they'll put you under the jail. And I have to be very frank and candid, because it is very easy to incarcerate people, and then they don't have a way to fight themselves out because of their socioeconomic background. So whether it's truth in sentencing, and you have to do 100% of the time, or it's accountability. So now you're incarcerated for a life sentence, or it's so many ways. Oscar, if you want to touch on it, I'm sorry, but it was, now I've lost my train of thought. Accountability, and truth in sentencing, and actual policies where they suck you in. It's very easy to get somebody locked up. If I could just say, it's super easy to give somebody a life sentence. Very hard to fight, even when, if the witness say that's not the person, or if the victim says that's not the person, mandatory drug sentence, and I see that popped up. It's very easy, but it costs thousands upon thousands of dollars to put a petition in, to do a post-conviction, successive post-conviction. And even after you think you have some relief in court, you still have to fight that time. And so it is so many different ways that you could find yourself facing this, and really don't have a way out. Death, pray God, thank God all the legislators heard Oscar's story. People not having the opportunity. He probably knows 1,000 other people that should not be there for whatever reason or another, whether they're past criminal behavior, whether they never was a criminal or otherwise. This will give people an opportunity like no other to come home, to be reacclimated to society. Sorry, Oscar.
Yeah, Oscar.
Well, I got out on clemency, right? I was the first one that got out as far as doing their own clemency. So when you look at, the court system, because I fought in the court system for so many years, like Lauren was just talking about. And what I was talking about earlier about how the courts can play games, and they pull all kinds of stunts to get convictions. That's what they did with me. They offered me 11 years before I went to trial, and when I didn't take, they turned around and gave me natural life. Now, I wasn't at the scene of the crime. Like I said, I'm gonna go a little bit into my case, just a little bit. I want to show y'all something, but just how I was talking about the courts are not infallible. So they give me natural life after I didn't take the 11. So I was supposed to do 5 years off of the 11. What they did to get their conviction against me, they used gang evidence, but they didn't have, like I said, I wasn't at the scene of the crime, didn't have a weapon. So the next thing was gang evidence. When my lawyer argued and said, well, this is not a gang-related case, they said it is a gang. Well, they said that they told the judge, they said, if you take the gang evidence out, you're going to be cutting the cuts out of our case. So they let them use the gang evidence. It was extensive gang evidence, making me look like a bad person. So I get convicted. When I get convicted, I make this argument that my case wasn't gang related to the appellate court, because in my co-defendant's case, they said that it wasn't gang related. But in mine, all of a sudden, it's gang related because they needed the gang evidence. So when I make this argument to the courts said, this is what the appellate court said. They said that the gang evidence was relevant because it showed that he might have done something. Now, how do you uphold a conviction like that? You get your conviction upheld like that, and then after they make this logical, what they call logical reasoning, they hit me with a Rule 23 order, which meant that my case couldn't be published to the public. So they hid my case for all of these years, and that's how I ended up getting to the debate team, and all of these legislators heard my story. That's how I ended up getting out. It wasn't through the court system. The courts, because after the Governor Rauner commuted my sentence to 70 years, which meant I had 5 more years left. I actually had a post-conviction in under the Young Adults Act. The new judge came in and looked at my case and told the state's attorney, he said, how did he get convicted of this? Y'all need to talk and make a deal. The state's attorney looked at my case and said, how did he do all of this time for this? My lawyer read my transcripts and said, I'm trying to figure out, what are they trying to say that you did? How did you do all of this time for this? So I'm just trying to show you that the courts are not infallible. It is very needful for a parole system to just, you know what I mean? Kind of like an overseat, you know what I mean? Because like I say, I would have been home 10 years earlier if we had a parole system, you know? So, and my story would have got heard, and that's all these guys need, is a chance to get their stories heard. Sorry, taking up too much time.
No, Oscar, we love everything you have to say, and you've thank you for sharing. And it continually strikes me how at that debate, we had this public debate about how everyone should have the right to hear their stories heard, because I was personally convinced that every gentleman who was on the debate team, if they had their stories heard, they would be released. Like, they were all, you know them, they're amazing guys. They have such great character. They're so reliable and smart and driven. And I just, it's hard to imagine any of them doing anything that could have even put them in prison, because they must be so different from, you know, the person that they were at age 16 or whatever age they were when they got locked up initially. And yeah, I love that our whole argument was, we just want people to have their stories heard. And at that debate, you were the one who had your story heard, and the legislators were like, we need to help him get out. Like, it wasn't an official parole system, but it was just like, they were like, we need to get this guy out. This guy should not be in prison. And I feel like your release in the aftermath of that is just proof that, you know, hey, we have people in here who need to be heard. And we need to consider this. Ken, I see you've unmuted. Would you like to add something?
Definitely. Number one, during my time in the Department of Corrections, I say this without conviction, that I met some of the best men that I've ever met in my life. In my life. There was a couple of older guys that were in Stateville that caused me to think in a way that I had never thought before. Challenged me to think in a way that I haven't thought before. Just excellent, excellent. And to the point about the infallibility of the courts, you know, I had a case for a C number who had done a little over 46 years, and it was the crime that he was convicted of. It was physically impossible for him to have done it the way that they say he did it. Physically impossible. We made that argument to the parole board, and even though he wasn't exonerated, they released him right away. That's why we need this system. It's just another check and balance to help correct the wrong if a wrong had occurred.
I felt that overwhelmingly also throughout the pandemic, as not that it's over, but especially at the beginning when the panic was settling in and everyone was like, the prisons are petri dishes for disease and infection, and these people are at the highest risk. It's worse than like a long-term care facility because people don't have limitless access to soap and cleaning supplies, and they can't get masks. Wearing masks was often actually against the rules at the beginning of the pandemic in most Illinois prisons. So all of these people started applying for clemency in huge numbers because that was the only route that they had, is to appeal directly to the governor. That's what clemency is. You appeal to Governor Pritzker and you say, Governor Pritzker, please grant me executive grace and let me go from prison. And so instead of having a board that was set up to hear these pleas and these considerations and make these considerations and make these determinations, we had all of these things going directly to the governor, who was already overwhelmed with a lot of concerns that he needed to be concerned with, because it was, the beginning of COVID. And so we've been throwing all of these decisions directly up to Governor Pritzker, when most other states have another mechanism, another body that makes these decisions. And yes, Mrs. Wilson, I see what you're saying, and the fear that so many of us felt for our loved ones in prison in that time was unreal. The stress was more damaging and pressure filled than even usual, and it's not manageable on a usual day. And I'm sorry that you went through that. Okay. I'm sorry. Bottom line, we shouldn't just have clemency. We need a board of people who exist to do this. It's kind of common sense. Okay. Does Ken or Oscar or Lauren have anything else they want to say before we kind of shift over to taking direct questions from the audience? Because it seems like we've got an audience that's on fire, and we want to engage with them. But we want you all to be able to make additional comments if you have any.
I agree. We need to go to the Q&A. That they want to get involved, so let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Thank you so much. That was amazing, and I really did learn a lot. I will now moderate the question and answers. If you have a question, please raise your hand and I will call on you. I feel like we have a very engaged audience and I don't want everyone to talk on top of each other. So if you go to reactions, there's a raise your hand button there. And if you can't see that, please just say, I have a question in the chat. While people are thinking of questions, I have a question for the panel. I think I saw something about this in the chat. How are you, through this work, how are you engaging with families of victims and what they may be asking for from the judicial system?
If I can answer, I know as far as Parole Illinois, they're working with a lot of victims groups to really see how they can start that healing process and what is it that they need. But through their research, they found a lot of victims of crime and these different situations want that person to be rehabilitated or to be able to improve, not just throw them up and lock away the key. So they are taking into consideration the victims, just like I'm sure the PRB does, but I know Parole Illinois actually is working to help and find and connect those people and also advocate for them, because a lot of people who are justice impacted also have been victimized in some way. I don't have the statistic, but a lot of times those people who turn to crime or whatever their situation was has been victimized themselves. So this is a whole type of healing and connection and just understanding each other's humanity that's taking place. But I think it's very necessary to have the victim's perspective and say so out there and heard and understood, and that person uplifted.
Thank you
Can
so
I say
much.
something on that?
Yes, go ahead.
I wouldn't necessarily say that I've been engaging with the victims' families, but I can say that I've been engaging for the victims' families. And I've been doing that because I can't, when I got out and I realized that I was getting out, I got out with the mindset that I was going to come out and try to set an example to show that a person that's been locked up for as long as I've been locked up can come out and function in society, not only function, but function well. And I wanted to show that because I realized it's bigger than me. I'm not representing just me. I feel like I'm representing everybody in there that I know that have a chance and feel that can make, and it's a lot of them. There's so many people in there that can get out and do exactly what I'm doing. Like I said, and that's why I made it, Katrina asked me before, she said, what do you want to be known? I said, youth and adult mentor, because that's my job. And I wanted that to be out there because, like I say, there are a lot of people in there. I remember we used to be in there and we'd be talking. A lot of the guys that was on the debate team, we got to get out there and help these young guys, man, get them to see, what we used to do when we were in there, we would go to the child hall and just, talk about how we can get out and impact society. So I know it's a lot of guys in there that can do that. But yeah, I'm more so my trying to impact for the family, so to speak, in that way by being an example.
Thank you.
And if it's okay, if I just add, like, on the level of the bill, we have been engaging with multiple victims' rights advocates and groups, and we have lots of individuals who are on board. And we've also been officially endorsed by the Chicago Alliance Against Sexual Exploitation, which is a survivors and victims' rights group. Yeah, that's just on the official level of HB 2399 and how we've heard victims' opinions on the bill.
Thank you. All right. We have a question from Mrs. Wilson.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi, I'm Mrs. Wilson. My question, I didn't forget it. My question was, besides writing legislators, what else can we do as far as putting the information out there to help these people get home? And secondly, as far as the victims, I am a victim of a violent crime, and we look at things totally different depending on where it was, because I died and the hospital brought me back. So I was really, really messed up. And I wouldn't want the person that did that to me to serve a life sentence because the judge decided to give them 75 years instead of 20 years. I would want them to see the wrongs in their doings and then try to make it right for better so they could teach other people. So as far as victim groups and things, and they have families and sons and children in there where at first they may have felt one way, but now their grandson is in there for the same thing or something different. So they feel a different way about it, because over sentencing is basically what this is about. Because if they weren't over sentenced or the judge didn't feel, well, I don't like you, I don't like your type, or I don't like your kind, I'm going to give you 50 years for this, I'm going to give you 30 years for this. And guess what? You're going to serve it consecutively. That means you have no chance to get home. So after you do what you need to do, you can't be who you need to be and learn what you need to learn. Now I'm in jail just sitting and rotting. When I could be in there and say, no, I looked at this life wrong. I shouldn't have been with these people. I should have been into this. Not just religion, not just God. Let me learn, because I didn't go to school trying to make money to feed my family or whatever the situation may be. So it's like this parole hearing to say, hey, for the last 17 years that my husband been in there, he has not been in trouble. He's trying to stay out of his way, do what he needs to do. And I am his support system. And we're going to help keep him on track. But we're trying to fight for him to come home. And it's financially draining. And not only when you're doing things and you're paying lawyers, when you got a good job, that's good. But I was a paramedic and I got hurt. And when I got hurt, the money got hurt. And now, so I don't have the money. So now he's stuck. He's stuck in the system where he has no way home when he doesn't deserve to be there. So I'm just saying, where I want to help push this bill, and whatever we need to do, even if it's buildings on the outside, when they do come out, if they don't have a support system, we can get a building on the outside to say, hey, we're going to teach you how to do a computer. We're going to teach you some kind of welding. We're going to teach you how to cook. We're going to teach you CPR. We're going to teach you how to make a change in this world. And don't look at it like, I only had one life. I only had one chance and I messed up and I'm going to pay for it until death, until I come back or whatever it is. That's not fair.
Thank you so much. That is so powerful. So, Katrina, the rest of the panel, what else can we do besides contacting our state legislators?
Well, I definitely think we need to get the word out there. If you heard Katrina earlier, she was talking about she didn't know that there was not parole in Illinois. I've had that conversation with so many people that just don't know. So we need to spread the word. Spread it on your social media. Have other people on their social media spread it. Just, I mean, the same way we make videos go viral on Facebook and all that, make this go viral as well, because people don't know. And so many of us Black and brown families, our loved ones, our friends, they're the ones that are affected by this criminal justice system the way it is. So that's what we got to do. We got to get the word out there. You got to spread it. I mean, if I got 2,000 people on my Facebook page, I need to share it with those 2,000 people, and everybody else do the same, you know, so we can just keep going and share the word.
Can I piggyback on something just to add to a little bit of what Ken was saying? Not only do we need to share it, we need to let the people that we're sharing it with know that they need to contact their legislators, because a lot of people, if we share it and they don't understand what to do after that, they just know and don't know what to do. So let them know that they need to contact the legislators. We do what we do as far as the Parole Illinois, but we reach in such a small degree of people. But if everybody start sharing it and then letting them know, we need you to contact legislators, because states attorneys, you know, a lot of the state's attorneys, they feel that the public wants harsh sentencing, you know. So that's the hindrance. And once they see that the constituents, they're going to listen to the constituents. Once they see that the constituents are on board with you know, not so harsh sentencing, or however you want to put it, then that's when you I think we'll start really having more of an impact with that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Maria Hernandez has a question.
Yes, hi. So I've been, trying to keep in touch and keeping my loved one updated with everything and trying to spread the word and so forth. So, but, because he had just called me. So he did have a question, because I asked him, do you have any questions, since we're limited? Because he got now on the parole, which I didn't know that he didn't know he was eligible to like stay updated being incarcerated. So which is great for him, because that helps him stay up to date with everything that we're trying to do. So his question was, if both bills need to get past the HB and the SB in order for this to help him, or can it just be one?
Katrina?
Yeah, I can answer that. So we do need to pass it in both houses. And the plan is to pass it in the House before May 31st. So our representatives are in legislative session until then. So that's the deadline for us to get it passed in the House. We're going to try to get it passed in the Senate during veto session, which happens in the fall. So we'll be doing more pushes like this come September to, get people as involved as possible, and this time contacting their senators. We try to stay as engaged with people on the inside as possible. We have over 1,000 people that we communicate with on the inside who are a part of this. So did you say that your loved one gets our messages, our newsletters on the inside?
He just started, because he didn't even know he can have that, since I've told him. I try to keep him updated on everything, everybody that I follow and so forth. And through one of the chats through Parole, they're like, well, we can have him set up. So I'm like, oh, wow, so I know through conversations with him, trying to keep him updated, he's been spreading the word in there, telling other inmates, talk to your loved ones, this is what's going on, and also encouraging them to, do what their part, because like, yes, this program, that doesn't mean everybody's gonna have, but they got to do their part too, to, not get in trouble, just, be good, so this, hopefully they, when their story is heard, they can plead their case and say, hey, I am being productive in here and so forth, so, and, for him, he's limited in, educational programs because he is in PC. So he's like, as much as I can try to sign up, they don't have a lot of options. So, that's a struggle, so he's like, what can I do to help, better his chances, other than, I mean, he doesn't get in trouble or nothing. So, but the other question he did have too was, after this bill gets passed, how long before it like takes effect? Like, how long would somebody have to wait? Like, does it take a year? Does it take a few months?
As soon as, so it's got to pass the House, it's got to pass the Senate, and then the governor has to sign it. So if we meet our timeline goals and get enough support, that could happen by the end of this calendar year. So as soon as it passes, it goes into effect right away. There is a provision that says for the first 3 years after the bill passes, only people over the age of 50 are going to be heard. That's in order to prioritize people who are elderly. And the very sad reality of that is that the life expectancy for people living in prison is over 16 years shorter than people on the outside in the United States. So people qualify as elderly much earlier in life when they're in prison. So depending on the age of your loved one, either they'll become eligible immediately or after 3 years or on their 50th birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Lauren, did you want to add to that, or should I go to the next question? You're muted.
Okay, I just wanted to add one thing. Thank you all so much for sharing your stories and getting on. But there's another thing that Parole, okay, I'm back. I'm sorry. There's another resource that I wanted to offer to everybody. It's for just a safe space, Parole Illinois' Loved One Space. Myself and a few other women had this idea, just a support space for, the loved ones and the support system for the support system to come. So if anybody, if you're interested, if you want to send me your email, I don't think I can message back, put it there, and then I will add you. And we just meet once a month. So if everybody's telling their stories, and I know so emotional and things happening in the pandemic and visitors starting back. And if anybody's interested, if you'll send me that, I will add you. And thank you guys for sharing, about your loved ones.
Thank you. Bryant, you have a question? You have your hand raised.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Brian Harvey. Actually, Katrina just answered one of the questions that I had, and I was just explaining that provision that was included in the bill. But then I wanted to know the status of the bill, and if the panelists could explain just a little bit about how vital it is to pass this for those who are medically vulnerable as well. And that's just for clarification for any viewers to know that the current system does not work.
Thank you. Katrina, you said that the timeline includes getting it passed in the House
Yes.
by the end of this month. I think you've said that means we need 60 votes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where are we in the thermometer of counting votes there?
We've got 52. So we're real close, like scary close. We're already closer than anyone thought we could be. So we're already rejoicing at the amazing success that we've had. And we're really hopeful that we can get the remaining 8 we need in the next 2 weeks. So this is prime time, fill out that Action Network link. I'll drop it in the chat again. And the other question was, how does this impact medically vulnerable people? The reality is that Illinois doesn't only not have a parole system, it doesn't have a system of compassionate release. So there is no way in the status quo for people to, apply to be released because of medical considerations. So this would cover people in that situation as well. But I also know that Bryant is an amazing activist who is involved in this kind of thing. So Bryant, if you want to answer your own question, I feel like you would probably do it better than I would.
Yeah, well, I really wanted to hear from other panelists, but it is extremely vital for those who are medically vulnerable. I myself was directly impacted for 7.5 years, and needed life saving surgeries that I was getting denied by IDOC, as well as just seeing others who were, housed inside of infirmary settings who couldn't move their limbs, who were just, sitting in there rotting, had no help, no support from anyone, were so elderly that they had no family. I mean, it's so sad. So this would, give those a chance to go in front of a board as well, so that, they can get home and die in dignity with their loved ones, you know what I mean? Share those last moments with their families. But I wanted to hear from others who were directly impacted because they were in facilities I may not have been in, and they may have saw some things that I didn't see inside of hospital settings or just inside of the facility itself.
Well, I can say that I saw it firsthand in the Department of Corrections, and through my work at the law firm, we do a lot of civil rights violations cases regarding medical treatment. And there's just no easy way to say it, but the Wexford medical health that they provide in the system is woefully inadequate. Woefully inadequate. I mean, you should not have to go to court just to get basic medical attention. You should not. I mean, you waste thousands and thousands of dollars in court over a basic thing about your hearing is you're losing your hearing and you need a hearing aid. Why should you have to go to court for something like that? It's terrible, terrible. And I mean, it works against us because all of our tax dollars are being used to fight these cases when all you got to do is use a little common sense. If you need a hearing aid, you should be able to get a hearing aid. If you need a prosthetic limb, you should be able to get that. All of these, just a little bit of common sense will go a long way. It's just there's so much. Oh boy, it's just amazing. And yes, Brian, I will share my email address in the chat in 1 second.
Thank you.
Hi.
Brian, did you have another question? Or I thought I had lowered your hand. All right, Lauren.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay.
I just noticed Donna's comment in the chat about the parole process, and me being in this position, the whole process is steeped in mystery because you're not allowed to know if the PRB has made a recommendation that's favorable or unfavorable. And really all you can go on is rumors. And then there aren't any systems or no checks and balances. So it's kind of vague, and a little bit of rules, but there's nothing solid to say, how can I do my clemency better this time? What do they think I need to work on? Why was it denied? Why was it successful? It's a rolling dice. It's a shot in the dark. And when Katrina was mentioning earlier, everybody was trying to apply at the beginning of COVID because so many people were dying on the inside, people that work there, everything. But it's really hard to know who they're going to recommend or who they aren't, or what those stipulations might be. And then it goes on to the governor, and then he has it for however long he has it. And there is no there isn't a rhyme or reason a lot of times. And so you're like, okay, well, I know that past governors 9 out of 10 times have sided with whatever decision the PRB makes, but you don't know what decision that's going to be. And then, so, and Sherry or some other people that have had experiences can speak on that. But like right now, Manny has his clemency. We did that in November. It was sent to the governor in December, in January, but we don't know what or where. And it's kind of like up in the air with the process, at least as far as, and I've called and asked, well, what happens? And it's very, we cannot tell you, we don't know, or, even a lawyer can't get access to that. We were blessed enough to have Illinois Prison Project do like a little clemency packet. So that's how he wrote everything out, and we kind of use that to supplement some things. But people are paying $5,000 and $6,000 and $10,000 to have a lawyer write up a clemency for them. And so it sometimes it comes back to like money and finance to help a person. But the PRB process is kind of a mystery. If somebody has information on that, please let me know, because I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where we're at with that, months later.
All right, thank you. It looks like that Katrina dropped a list of people who have not signed on to the bill that we think possibly could sign on to the bill. And so please look at that and maybe copy paste into a note somewhere on your computer if you can, maybe screenshot it, and then check to see who is your state legislator, your state representative, and see if you need to make a call. I do know that using the Action Network is important to do, but then after you do that, follow up with a call and see if their office is open, and stop by or make an appointment. Grab a friend and make an appointment to talk to them about this bill.
Can I also throw way back to a question that Nancy had at the beginning of this, the whole event, which was, should we send multiple action networks to our legislators? Ideally, you get a ton of those sent, but each from different people. So if you can get your neighbors to sign on and send the letters of support to your reps, that would be ideal. And then calling them and trying to set up an appointment with them, like connecting with them in different ways, is all good. We don't necessarily recommend just filling out the same form letter over and over again. But yeah, can we invite Sherry to answer the more direct question from Donna?
Sure.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, sorry, I'm in my kitchen, but I wanted to answer Donna's last question. She's asked a number of really good questions that we should answer, but to her last question about the process, it's the same PRB process that is used with C numbers, and clearly there are issues with the process that need to be addressed. So we address some of those issues in our bill. So the two issues that we addressed in our bill is we specified a number of criteria that the PRB should consider, because right now there's no specified criteria that they can consider, and it is, as has been kind of a mystery as with the governor's decision. So we specified criteria such as the history of the person's efforts at rehabilitation, including involvement in programming or independent efforts at rehabilitation, their plan for after paroling, and various other factors that are relevant to whether they'll have a successful parole. Those are criteria that the PRB should consider. We don't put any specific regulations that the PRB has to follow other than the current process for C numbers, because we were told that we should try to pass this bill and then work on transforming the PRB process after that. So we're very aware that there are changes that need to be made in the PRB system also. And we have a white paper of suggestions for how we think the PRB process should be improved, but those are not in our bill. You asked a question earlier about why parole was abolished, and there were some legitimate criticisms of the parole process across the political spectrum, people recognizing that the parole process was being implemented in a very racist way. Unfortunately, instead of addressing the racism, they just abolished the whole parole system for anyone after 1978, and racism continued, as we all know. 2/3 of the people who have life and de facto life sentences are Black people. So we do want to, as Katrina said, restore a focus on rehabilitation, but we're not just restoring the old parole system. We want to make some changes to that process. Only a few improvements are on our bill, but we do hope to continue working on improving the parole board so it's more fair.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions. Do we have any last action items? Laura, Katrina, or from anyone else from the panel?
I would say if you can scroll back up through the chat and find out who your rep is. Under the who's my rep, I put a link. So you can just type in your address there and it will tell you directly who your state rep is. It's just good information for always, but especially good information to check against the list that Bryant asked for above that of who are the legislators who are still on the fence. So if you find out who your legislator is and then you see them on that list, that starts with Kelly M. Burke, Deb Conroy, Mara Hirschauer. If you see them, please send me a direct message. I would love to help you advocate. You could get us one of the remaining 8 votes that we need. So we need 8 votes from these 15 Democratic representatives. So super possible. If we try hard, hope is so high, it's dangerous. Also, we often put out actions that are timely through our network, our MailChimp and our email network, as well as on social media. So if you fill out our connection form on our website or follow us on Twitter or Facebook, we often send out ways that you can help in the moment when it's most applicable at that time.
Awesome. Thank you. Any last words from our panel?
Let me just share one quick thing. That the Illinois Administrative Rules outlines everything that the PRB considers in parole cases. I don't have the link right now, but I will find it and maybe send it over to Katrina, who can share it with anybody else that wants it. So thank you for that. And thank you for having me here. I'm definitely glad to be a part of it.
Thank you. All right, I think that's it. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I am really excited. This energy, yes, it was a blessing to be here. Thank you. So do please sign up for Pro Illinois informational, send your state rep an email, phone call, and get like 3 friends to do the same thing with you.
Excellent. And Ms. Wilson, keep your head up.
Yes.
And a huge thank you to Veronica for hosting us.
Thank you.